You probably grew up hearing that the secret to success is being organized and never leaving anything to the last minute. But what if what you were taught about productivity is actually a trap for brilliant minds? Today, we will explore those daily behaviors that you always thought were your flaws, but are actually signs of a very high IQ. The first of these is something you have probably been judged a lot for: procrastination. Think about an important project at work, or that annoying time to file income taxes in April. Most people start preparing weeks in advance. You? Wait until the night before. Society calls this laziness and irresponsibility, but science has another name: strategic procrastination. Brains with a very high IQ often need this extreme pressure of the deadline. During the days when you seem to be doing absolutely nothing, maybe just binge watching a series or staring at the ceiling, your subconscious was working frantically. It was running simulations in the background, silently connecting complex ideas. When the clock finally starts ticking against you, this pressure triggers a spike of dopamine and adrenaline that forces your brain into a state of absurd hyperfocus. That is why you can sit down and produce in just 3 hours a creative and superior work to what others took 3 weeks to do. You were not running away from work. Your mind was just waiting for the perfect storm to execute a genius connection. Therefore, do not feel guilty for leaving things to the last minute. But if you think your procrastination annoys outsiders, just wait until you find out why. Your bizarre habit of talking to yourself does not mean you are losing your mind, but exactly the opposite. Speaking of intense mental processes, let's be honest. How many times have you caught yourself in the middle of a heated argument in the shower with yourself, or maybe muttering quietly while looking for that specific sauce on the supermarket shelf? If someone saw you, they probably looked at you sideways, as if you had a screw loose. But the truth is that this habit of talking to yourself out loud is not a sign of madness. It is, in fact, a sign that your brain is operating at high performance. Think of your brain like a processor running too fast. Sometimes the flow of thoughts is so chaotic and fast that you need a way to anchor these ideas in the real world so you don't lose your train of thought. When you verbalize what you are thinking, you are basically using your voice as an external RAM memory. This helps slow down the thinking to a speed you can manage, improves focus, and increases clarity in problem solving. Psychologists have found that people who say the name of an object out loud while looking for it, like car keys or glasses, find it much faster than those who stay silent. So, the next time you are debating a master plan with the walls, know that you are knowing crazy. You are just organizing genius. Now, if your mind needs this vocal organization to function, your physical environment tells a completely different story. And this is where that mess on your desk that everyone keeps complaining about comes in. You must have heard from a boss or relative that old saying: a messy desk is a sign of a messy mind. Since we were little, we are taught to keep our room tidy, papers in perfectly labeled folders, and the office desk impeccable. But the reality of incredibly intelligent minds is, very frequently, a true visual chaos. Think of the famous photos of Albert Einstein's office, or the garage where Steve Jobs started. Those stacks of books, half-empty coffee mugs, lost notes, and tangled cables are not the result of pure laziness. For a person with a high IQ, physical disorder is not a distraction. It is actually a creative fuel. Researchers have already shown that perfectly organized and aseptic environments encourage to follow the rules and play it safe. On the other hand, chaotic environments stimulate the brain to break traditions and produce completely out-of-the-box ideas, creating unusual connections between seemingly unrelated things. Your intelligent mind is focused on processing complex concepts and structuring abstract ideas that it simply turns off the need to align the pens on the table. The physical world simply loses priority. So, your chaos is not a lack of work ethic, it is just the visual architecture of your creativity operating at full throttle. And if your workspace usually shocks some more traditional people, Just wait until we talk about what comes out of your mouth when you decide to tell a joke. You know that moment at Thanksgiving dinner with the family, or in the middle of a tense corporate meeting, when you let out a sarcastic comment or a dark humor joke. Half the table tries to hold back their laughter, while the other half looks at you with pure disapproval. Society loves to label constant sarcasm as cynicism, arrogance, or even a lack of empathy. But neuroscience has a very different view of your apparently distorted sense of humor. Understanding and formulating a sarcastic sentence or a dark humor joke requires true cognitive weightlifting. In a fraction of a second, your brain needs to analyze the literal meaning of words, the context of the situation, the listener's expectation, and then intelligently invert it all to deliver the perfect response. This requires a very high level of mental agility and problem solving. Furthermore, people with a very high IQ easily see the logical flaws and absurdities of everyday social rules. Your dark humor is nothing more than a brilliant defense mechanism, an escape valve to deal with the incompetence around you or with illogical situations, without simply losing your patience with everyone. But if your sharp tongue sometimes creates an awkward atmosphere, your next ignored habit usually confuses and exhausts even your closest friends. I am talking about your uncontrollable habit of changing passions like someone changes clothes. If you did a retrospective of the last 2 years of your life and showed it to someone, it would be confusing at the very least. In 1 month, you dive headfirst into how to build and program mechanical keyboards. In the next, you spend hundreds of dollars on rare seeds and become an amateur expert in hydroponic cultivation. And it does not stop there. It could be deep Thai cooking, board game theory, medieval history, or trying to fix an old car engine watching YouTube tutorials, even without ever having changed a tire. Most people around you will call you fickle. Your family members might say that you never finish what you start, and HR bosses think your resume and interests show a lack of commitment to a long-term career. But this view is very limited. This leap of intense passions for random subjects is not a lack of focus. It is a clear reflection that your high IQ is operating at maximum speed, devouring information, because it has a desperate hunger for difficult stimuli. When you find a new topic, the novelty and complexity send immense surges of dopamine. You learn the rules of the game and map the patterns much faster than an average person could. And that is exactly where the problem happens. When the main challenge ends and you master the basics, your highly intelligent brain enters an almost repulsive mode, thinking the subject is exhausted or simply boring. Therefore, you are not irresponsible for abandoning hobbies halfway. You are just rapidly shifting the focus of your mental superprocessor. Now, all this capacity to absorb the world does not mean that your memory is infallible. In fact, it is quite peculiar, as we will see in the next topic. If there is something incredibly frustrating in the life of someone with an advanced mind, it is the fact that, to others, you often seem like the most forgetful and clumsy person in the world. After all, how are you able to explain, in precise mathematical details, a documentary about the fluctuations of the gold market in 2008 that you saw 5 years ago, but cannot remember the name of the new coworker who had lunch with you yesterday? Worse, you just went out to the street, locked the house door, and realize a block away that you have no idea where you left your glasses, or the car keys, or the wallet. Society generally interprets this behavior as chronic carelessness, a head in the clouds, or even jokingly, an early sign of dementia. It is almost shameful to explain that you have a high IQ, because people's first reaction is to ask, then why do you always forget your wedding anniversary? Neuroscience has the exact answer. This is called selective forgetting. The highly intelligent brain has an exceptional talent for optimizing energy. It is like a state-of-the-art computer focused on solving heavy simulations and projecting complex future scenarios. And what does an intelligent system do with basic, superfluous, and temporary files? like the exact place where you dropped the key in the hallway 3 minutes ago. It simply does not archive them. Your mind knows that simple factual information can be found again if needed, or that there are phone reminders for boring tasks. So, it actively erases these short and mundane memories, freeing up cognitive space to continue creating deep and original connections about important concepts. Your forgetfulness is not a system failure. It is an intentional and optimized update of your long-term memory. And speaking of a sharp memory for complex concepts, you have certainly used your logical capacity to corner other people's opinions. And this is exactly what often drives people away from you. Be honest. How many times have you caught yourself in the middle of a perfectly friendly conversation and out of nowhere started defending the opposite perspective? Maybe your entire family is agreeing on how a movie was horrible or how a political decision was a disaster. And even if you secretly agree with them 100%, a voice inside your head forces you to say, yes, but what if we look from this other angle? Congratulations, you have just activated the devil's advocate mode, and people around you probably think you do this just to be contrary, annoying, or arrogant. For those on the outside, this need to debate the losing side seems like pure intellectual sadism, but the reality is that people with an extremely high IQ have a biological aversion to easy conclusions and herd thinking. When everyone in a room quickly agrees on something without questioning, your brain triggers a security alarm. It needs to stress test that idea. You are not defending the opposite side because you believe in it. You are doing this to push the logic of the original idea to its limit, looking for cracks, biases, or variables that everyone ignored for the simple comfort of agreeing with each other. This habit makes you an excellent strategist and problem solver, because you see blind spots that others prefer to avoid, the bad side. This pushes away people who are only looking for emotional validation in a conversation. While they want a hug and a "you are right," you are dissecting their problem like a surgeon in a lab. It is lonely, but it is the price your mind pays for the relentless pursuit of truth. And speaking of solitary environments, there is a very clear reason why you feel that you can only truly think when the rest of the world finally goes to sleep. And speaking of solitary environments, there is a very clear reason why you feel that you can only truly think when the rest of the world finally goes to sleep. Since the Industrial Revolution, the corporate world has pushed on us the idea that successful people wake up at 5 a.m., drink a green juice, meditate, and are already producing before the sun rises. If you do not work this way, society quickly sticks a lazy or unmotivated sticker on your forehead. But the inconvenient truth is that a gigantic portion of the brightest and most innovative minds in the world only truly starts to function when the sun goes down and the rest of the house, or the city, finally goes to sleep. If you have the habit of being a night owl, working, reading, or creating until 2 or 3 in the morning, know that there is a fascinating neurobiological explanation for this. People with a very high IQ have an extremely acute sensory sensitivity. During the day, your brain is bombarded by thousands of micro-interruptions. Traffic noise, the hum of the air conditioner, email notifications, people talking in the next room, and the constant pressure of having to respond immediately to the demands of others. All this drains your cognitive energy. When night falls, the world turns off. There are no more emails arriving, nor the expectation of social interaction. It is only in the absolute silence of the dawn that your brain can lower the guard of sensory filters and dive deeply into that uninterrupted flow state. Without the trivial distractions of business hours, your mind is free to connect complex concepts at the speed it really likes to operate. Working in the dead of night is not indiscipline. It is your intellectual survival instinct seeking the only safe environment for your creativity to explode. But if you think that creating this isolation cocoon at night is already a strange habit, wait until you analyze how you automate the most basic choices of your daily life. If you are the type of person who, when finding a song you like, puts it on repeat and listens to it for 5, 10, or even 12 hours straight without stopping, while working or studying, know that many people around you find this disturbing. Or else, maybe you are the type of person who, if allowed, eats the same dish for breakfast and lunch, from Monday to Friday, without changing a single ingredient. And when you find a t-shirt or pants that fit well, you go back to the store and buy 4 more identical pieces. To others, this is considered a clear sign of monotony, lack of creativity, laziness, or a mild symptom of OCD. But if you analyze it closely, this is one of the most advanced survival mechanisms a highly brilliant mind can adopt. There is a psychological concept called decision fatigue. During the day, our brain spends immense amounts of glucose and energy just deciding things: what to wear, which route to take to work, what to reply to an email, and what to prepare for dinner. For a person with a very high IQ, the brain is already naturally overheated and exhausted, as it spends all its time analyzing all angles and possible scenarios of any situation. By automating mundane decisions, listening to the same repetitive playlist that does not require attention, or wearing the same clothing style every day, like Albert Einstein or Steve Jobs did, you are creating a cognitive shortcut. You eliminate the useless waste of energy on trivial choices, so you can direct 100% of your intellectual capacity to solve the complex problems that really matter. It is your operating system running at maximum efficiency. But there is a specific moment when this super powerful machine that is your mind simply seems to stop working. And that is when most people get truly scared. And that is our 10th strange habit.